am Emily Carter, 32 years old, the invisible child in a fake perfect family. In their eyes, I am just a quiet girl, doing an unclear online job, not as prominent as my brother Michael, a famous heart surgeon, or my sister Sophia, a social media model with millions of followers. No one really knows that I have built a technology empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In this house, I am a shadow, forgotten, underestimated, and despised to the core. The twinkling lights of the towering Christmas tree reflected off the neatly wrapped presents at the base, creating a scene as bright as a perfect Christmas card. But to me, it was all just a curtain of glitz and gloom. The scent of cinnamon from my mother Laura had just baked still hung in the air, wafting through the elegant dining room of the Carter family home in upstate New York. I heard Michael and Sophia's laughter ringing out like a chorus of jubilant laughter, mixed with the deep voice of my father, Richard, as he held up a large, glittering silver-wrapped gift box. I sat motionless at the dining table, a shadow in the room filled with laughter. My chair was coldly empty. Nothing but a small package, no sign of presents. A stark contrast to the lavish gifts piled up beside Michael and Sophia. Michael, 35, was tearing at the wrapping paper with excitement. His eyes were glowing, his face showing the familiar smugness. Sophia, 28, had just snatched a designer bag from under the chair, her eyes unable to hide her excitement. My father, Richard, 60 Sastio, owns a private equity firm. My mother, Laura, 58, is a homemaker by old-fashioned standards. They smile contentedly at their two beloved children. Their faces are lit with pride. They don't know or choose to ignore that my father's company, Carter Financial, is in crisis. I've listened in on too many tense phone calls, too many anxious whispers behind closed doors. I've read every financial report, every line of text and chart. They don't know that I understand the current situation better than anyone in this room. Oh my God, Michael, a Swiss watch. My mother's voice rose, cutting through the silence in my mind like a knife cutting through a wound. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide, her gaze fixed on the sparkling watch in Michael's hand. Michael smiled proudly, holding the watch high, the light from the glass reflecting off his eyes like fire. It's perfect, Mom and Dad. I'm hooked. It's exactly my style. Sophia was no less radiant. She pulled a shiny key from her expensive bag, stared at it in amazement, then turned to my father in amazement. Dad, Mom, this is a key to an apartment in Manhattan? The Upper East Side? Of course, honey. My father laughed, patting Sophia on the shoulder proudly. For your convenience, for your work with fashion houses, you deserve to live in the best place. I watched Michael gleefully take in the Swiss watch, and Sophia go crazy over the Manhattan apartment key. I turned back to look at my place. A cold, empty space, as if someone had left it there on purpose. No gifts, no real glances at me. My parents just glanced at me like strangers, their gazes as light as a breeze, not bothering to leave a trace. My heart clenched. The feeling of being abandoned, of being ignored, I was used to it, but tonight, it was like a fresh, wordless cut. Michael glanced at me, his smile curled, cold and sharp as a knife. Sophia was busy taking a picture of the key, scribbling it on Instagram, completely ignoring me. Emily, you don't need expensive gifts, do you? My mother spoke softly, but her eyes never left Sophia, who was giggling at the gift in her hands. Her smile, half-hearted, faint, mixed with pity and contempt, was like a silent slap in the face. Being realistic is better, isn't it? You're always simple, not fussy. No one believed that I had built a technology empire on my own. In their eyes, I was still the silent loser in the dark corner of this family. But they didn't know that I had been secretly monitoring their every financial move, that I knew that Carter Financial was in free fall, that I knew every red number in the financial statements that they tried to hide. I clenched my hands under the table, my nails digging into my skin. A chill ran down my spine, turning all the hurt into iron determination. They will regret it, I whispered in my head, so quietly I wasn't sure I could hear them. They will pay for looking down on me, especially since I have the truth in my hands that they dare not face. It's time to not only reveal it, but also begin the plan to seek justice. Tonight, the game begins. I closed my eyes. A cold current, like an electric current, ran down my spine, pulling me back to the faint but haunting memories. A childhood immersed in an invisible shadow. My bedroom in this large villa was always colder than the rooms that were brightly lit and filled with the laughter of Michael or Sophia. There were no glowing toys, no colorful pictures, just empty, gloomy walls. I used to long for a wall of my own to stick my own doodles on, but that never came true. I always tried to struggle in silence, longing to be seen, even just once, through the eyes of my parents. I studied tirelessly, buried myself in books, got perfect A's, participated in every possible contest, painted with all my passion, wrote the stories in my heart. But all those efforts fell into a void, soundless, hopeless, invisible. Emily, you got an A in math? Good. My father, Richard, always sounded nonchalant, as if he were reading the morning news. His eyes never left me. Michael got a full scholarship to the Ivy League. That's something to be proud of, honey. That's what real achievement is. I still remember very clearly the time I won a city-level painting competition. I ran home, holding the painting in my arms, my face beaming, and showed it to my mother. Mom, I won a prize. She's beautiful, Emily. My mother, Laura, replied, her eyes never leaving the open fashion magazine where Sophia was smiling brightly on the cover. But my daughter, Sophia, she's a real star. She makes tens of thousands of dollars just from one photo shoot. That's a gift, you know? I also cannot forget the time my mother showed off to a guest a special, thick photo album filled with pictures of Sophia, from when she was just a toddler to when she became a famous advertising face. Every page was decorated with affectionate captions and proud expressions. I tiptoed closer and asked softly, in a hopeful voice, Mom, do I have a photo album too? I have a lot of beautiful pictures. My mother smiled wryly, the smile I knew by heart, half embarrassed, half evasive. Sophia has more activities than you. She's a public figure. As for your picture, I put it in storage. I'll find it someday. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my tears. The painting I had spent a month working on, the work I was most proud of, was also stuffed into a dusty corner of the warehouse. Never hung up, never mentioned. Like me, hidden, forgotten. Later, I also quietly discovered that my father regularly transferred money to Michael to pay for expensive tuition and sponsor personal projects. Sophia was subsidized by her parents for everything from modeling training to lavish photo shoots. As for me, every time I needed money to buy textbooks or attend a technology course, I had to ask for permission cautiously. And most of the time, I only received small amounts and cold instructions to save. Gradually, I realized this family would never see my true worth. They had a standard, and I, from beginning to end, had never fit it. It was in this coldness that a seed of financial independence quietly sprouted inside me. The self-consciousness that had been pressing down on my soul for years like a shapeless rock was now transforming into an underground fire, smoldering but persistent. One day, they will have to see me, I vowed, my voice as firm as a nail. I will use their oblivion to turn the tables. From that moment on, I began to follow my father's business closely. I read every document I could get my hands on, from financial statements to market strategies, from mergers to internal operations. I wanted to understand the rules of the game so that one day I could rewrite them myself. Christmas Eves repeated like an old song, regular and merciless, replaying the same script that had been burned into my mind like a scar that never faded. I used to think that if I tried hard enough, I would be accepted. I would be seen. I prepared thoughtful gifts, made small crafts, wrote cards in a sincere, trembling handwriting, each stroke a silent plea for recognition. I told myself, maybe this year would be different. Maybe this time they would really see me, Emily, and not just Michael or Sophia. But then all my efforts fell flat. I was always pushed aside, a lost supporting character in my own family drama. I still remember the Christmas of my 18th birthday. It was a cold night, but the air in the house was thick with joy for people who weren't me. Michael was handed a brand new, shiny black BMW, parked right in front of the mansion as a statement of status. Congratulations, son! My father, Richard, patted him on the shoulder, his eyes shining as if Michael had just won the Nobel Prize. This car will help you get around college. Don't worry about the money. Michael smiled contentedly, feigning humility, but his eyes were filled with a dazzling pride. Sophia, then 16, was handed an international modeling contract and a first-class ticket to Paris by her parents, a gift that opened her up to the world of glamour. This is amazing, Sophia. You're going to shine. My mother, Laura, hugged her like she was holding the most precious thing in the world. This is your big chance, and we'll always be behind you. Sophia, beautiful as a living wax statue, only smiled slightly, as if she was used to being placed in the spotlight. Then it was my turn. I sat up straight, my heart pounding in my chest, hope like a candle flickering in the wind. Maybe this time it would be different, I thought. Maybe it would mean something, even a little. Father Richard handed me a hastily wrapped gift box, the silver paper crumpled at the edges. I opened it with shaking hands. A set of china, plain white, no pattern, no markings other than silence. I stared at it, as if trying to dig for a hidden meaning in the cold porcelain. Emily, you don't need expensive things, do you? My mother's voice rang out, sweet yet sharp as a knife, as if speaking to an unreasonable child. It'll be good for you, actually. You can use this set of dishes when you move out. Sophia never needs such trifles, but I think you will need it for your simple life. Laughter erupted, echoing around the room. Michael and Sophia laughed the loudest, clear, decisive, like cold needles stabbing deep into my heart. I felt exposed, mocked in what should have been my home. My face was hot, but tears flowed back, bitter. I bit my lip, forcing myself to remain calm, though my hands were clenched white in my lap. And in that moment, the most humiliating, most painful moment, a decision came to me, sharp and clear as a knife carved into stone. I will not let this happen again, I told myself, my inner voice as hard as a sentence. They will never have the chance to humiliate me again. That night, I took action. I went online and searched for every publicly available financial report on Carter Financial, my father's company. I read every number, every line of report, every labyrinthine chart. I began to study the investment markets, mergers and acquisitions, the structure of large corporations. I studied bankruptcies, how companies fell and how they were revived. I dissected every flaw in their governance models. I no longer wanted to simply escape the pariah. I wanted to turn things around. I would study, I would accumulate, and if necessary, I would buy Carter Financial. A plan began to form in my mind, cold, ruthless, and unforgiving. The plan of a man who had been forgotten, now wielding the weapons of intelligence and money to reclaim his rightful place. I sat across from Father Richard in his study, which smelled of oak and old tobacco, where the light from a tilted desk lamp cast shadows across his face, making the deep lines of his face appear even more pronounced, as if carved from stone. The silence was tense, each second as heavy as a stone pressing down on his chest. In his hand was my report card, his eyes scanning each number with the coldness of a sharp knife. Emily, what's with that score? His voice was like broken ice falling into the dead silence of the room. His fingers tapped the scoreboard in dry rhythms. Economics, a B. You know you have to get an A to keep your Ivy League scholarship. Michael has never had a grade below an A. He was the best student in his class. I felt every cell in my body burn, but I tried to keep my composure. I think I want to go in another direction, Father, I said, my voice choking, almost breaking at the end. I looked at him, searching for understanding, for sympathy, for some semblance of fatherly love, but all I could see was coldness and frozen anger in his eyes. The sound of the report card hitting the desk rang out like a gavel. Turn around? What are you going to do? Drop out of the prestigious university that thousands of people dream of? Become a failure, Emily? Throw away everything your mother and I have poured into you? The door swung open. Michael walked in with his familiar half smile that cut through trust. His eyes swept over me, mocking. New plan, Emily? Surfing the internet for some stupid freelance ideas again? Dad, I told you. Emily doesn't have the chops to make it big. I have a scholarship. Sophia has an international modeling contract. And her? Give up. Exactly, Sophia said, her voice sweet as poison. She leaned against the doorframe, not bothering to enter. Her face was as perfectly made up as a porcelain statue, her eyes cold. You're not cut out for a competitive environment. Why don't you try being a secretary? It's stable, easy work, and right up your alley. Each of their words was like a sharp knife stabbing into my heart. Each word a long cut of blood and humiliation. I had heard it too much. Too many times of being despised, of being valued less than a piece of decoration in the house. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. In that moment, something inside me burned. Not pain anymore, but determination. A bright flame that tore through the darkness of humiliation. I will not give up, I burst out, my voice shaking but determined as an oath. I stood up, my eyes meeting each of them, not bowing, not backing down. I will build something you could never imagine. Something no one in this family, not even Dad, can touch. My father laughed, his laugh bitter as his final sarcasm. Arrogant. You can't even pass the subject. What do you expect to create? Are you daydreaming, Emily? I didn't reply. There was no need to say more. I quietly packed up my things, my old laptop, my notebook, and the money I'd saved from late nights at the library and small programming competitions. Not a fortune, but enough for a one-way ticket. I left New York, leaving behind my lavish mansion and my bitter memories. I headed to San Francisco, the heart of Silicon Valley, where unknowns had built legends from scratch, where worth was measured by intellect and drive, not blood. I swear, from where I stand, they will regret it. I will build an empire bigger than Carter Financial, an empire they will be forced to look up to. From the first day I arrived here, I have been quietly watching my father's public reports and business figures, waiting, analyzing, preparing. The plan is taking shape, quietly but surely, like a seed silently breaking through the rock to rise. And I will be the one to rewrite the rules of the game. San Francisco welcomed me with its vibrant, bustling pace, a breath of fresh air, far removed from the heavy, stuffy air of New York. I rented a tiny apartment in the Tenderloin, just big enough for a single bed and a scratched wood desk. From there, I moved into a modest startup office in Soma, a space of just a few square feet, walls covered with sticky notes and schematics. But in my eyes, a place where wild dreams could come true. The sound of typing echoed through the night, the smell of strong coffee from the small cafe downstairs, and the tense breathing of Silicon Valley gradually became the rhythm of daily life. For the first time in my life, I clearly felt alive. Really alive. I sat in front of my laptop screen, my fingers diligently dancing on the keyboard, each line of code appearing like the blood vessels of a new entity, a financial management application called Innovate Ledger, the first foundation for the Innovate Tech empire. I taught myself programming, read books on market analysis, and explored every single loophole in the current financial systems. The internet was my faithful teacher, books were my compass, and the pain of being overlooked in the past was an inexhaustible fuel. I went to technology workshops, sought out meetups, listened to the startup stories of people who slept in the office and drank instant noodles for a month. The late-night calls with financial advisors, the quick coffee breaks with potential investors, all were part of the journey I quietly drew. The first brick for my own empire. Sometimes I stopped, rubbed my tired eyes, and opened another tab in my browser, the website of Carter Financial, the investment firm my father had founded. I watched every revenue report, every line on the balance sheet, every chart that danced with red and green. I saw it clearly. Profits were falling. Investments were spread out but lacking depth. They were losing money, slowly but surely. A cold smile appeared at the corner of my lips. My plan was taking shape, as quietly but firmly as the layers of rock quietly shifting underground. My parents still called, just to check that I was okay, not doing anything to disgrace the family. Emily, are you still doing that online stuff? Laura's mother always sounded like I was on some shady path. When will you find a steady job? Are you earning any money? Women should have a steady job to secure their future, honey. How can you make a living working online? Michael's voice sometimes came from behind the phone, cutting in like a sharp thorn. Emily is probably wasting her time on useless things again. Surfing the web, writing nonsense. She has no idea about the real world. They didn't know. No one knew that I was quietly building a kingdom, an empire of my own, big enough to swallow up what they held. They had no idea that I was watching their every move, holding the pieces that could change the whole game. I had mapped out every step, every moment, every detail, leaving no room for error. Today, Innovate Ledger officially launched. I whispered to myself, my eyes glued to the computer screen. A small notification appeared in the corner of the page, marking the official launch of Innovate Tech. A few congratulatory emails from early investors who had kept an eye on me popped up. People who saw potential in me that my parents never did. But this was just the beginning. I continued to stay up late, coding nonstop, turning ideas into interfaces, algorithms, and user experiences. At the same time, I kept a close eye on my father's company's finances. Every time I saw the numbers drop, I knew. The moment was near. Every line of code I wrote, every report I read, was a stepping stone to my future. I couldn't stop. The pain and humiliation they threw at me, I turned it into fuel, and I burned it to fly. A year passed, a year of sleepless nights, mornings that started with cold coffee and dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. But all the hard work was worth it. Innovate Tech grew at a rapid pace far beyond my most optimistic vision. We moved from a small, dimly lit office to a bright, modern space where hundreds of talented people are working hard to build the future. The Innovate Ledger application quickly became a familiar financial tool for millions of people, putting its name on the global financial technology map. The company's value soared to hundreds of millions of dollars. I built an empire, just like the oath I had silently made in the darkest night of my life. I sat in my private office, my swivel chair facing the large glass windows where the San Francisco skyline stood proudly in the sunset. I had succeeded, far beyond the imagination of those who had once looked down on me. But I kept this success to myself. I was torn between going public and enjoying their admiring and bitter gazes, or quietly waiting for the right moment to deliver an undeniable shock. In the end, I chose silence. I wanted them to be surprised. I wanted them to face the truth when there was no way back. I began the negotiations in silence. I couldn't show myself because the name Emily Carter would immediately put my father on guard and stop me at all costs. I created Aegis Ventures, a completely separate camouflage subsidiary, to conduct the deal in the dark. My lawyers worked tirelessly, going over every number, every clause in the contract. The negotiations dragged on for months, tense and manipulative. Carter Financial tried to hide its dire financial situation, but I saw it all along. Every flaw, every sign of collapse. And finally, when they were at their weakest, I made my move. The deal was done for a heartbreakingly low price, a blow to my father's pride. Carter Financial was mine now. Emily Carter, the daughter they had considered a burden, a disappointment, someone who should never have been born. That morning, my assistant, Sarah, gently placed a copy of Business Insider on my desk. The cover was a photo of me at a tech conference, smiling confidently, bathed in light. The headline read, Emily Carter, the quiet billionaire behind a billion-dollar tech empire. I picked up the magazine, skimming through the pages of my improbable journey from college dropout to high-powered CEO of Innovate Tech. I smiled, a cold, knowing smile. Now was the time. The upcoming Christmas, a holiday that had always brought back sad memories, would be the stage for my dramatic comeback. I would carry the truth, my father's company on the brink of collapse, in my hands. The script was ready. I sent out invitations to my parents, Michael and Sophia, telling them that I would be home for Christmas this year. I wanted to look each of them in the eye when the truth came out. I prepared small, unpretentious, but deeply personal gifts, like hidden reminders. I wanted to test whether, after all these years, After all the coldness and hurt, they still had a shred of affection left. I wanted to know if they had enough humanity to repent or would continue to treat me as an outsider. But this time, I was the one who took the initiative. I would not just tell them about their successes, I would expose their downfall. Every document, every figure, every piece of evidence, carefully prepared. Everything was set up, and this Christmas Eve would not be an ordinary night. I walked into the Carter house on Christmas Eve, a place that had once been a home, but had become a reminder of a childhood of abandonment. The familiar scent of cinnamon still hung in the air, but this time it was not the same warm sadness as before. It felt like a sense of control, a cold, icy control. The twinkling lights of the tree, the carefully hung wreaths around the room, every detail was flashy, but nothing in it could stir my heart anymore. It had long since hardened. Now there was only a terrifying calm. My mother, Laura, came out to greet me with a proper but emotionless manner. "Emily, you're home, just in time for Christmas." Her voice was flat, lifeless, devoid of warmth, and she didn't bother to hug me or touch my cheek as other mothers would. She just nodded and turned away, her eyes sweeping over me as if I were a blurry object. She quickly returned her attention to Michael and Sophia, who were sitting on the sofa, talking and laughing as if I had never entered the room. "Oh, Emily's here," Michael said, his tone full of mockery. He looked me up and down as if he were inspecting an outdated item of clothing. "Still pursuing that online job? Are you okay? At least you're not homeless?" Sophia kept her eyes glued to the phone screen, not bothering to look up. She just glanced at me with cold eyes. Her dark red lips curled into a half smile full of disdain. "Emily, why don't you find a more stable job, like a secretary? That startup thing sounds pretty unstable. With such a roller coaster ride, how can you survive long term?" I smiled, a paper-thin, emotionless smile. Little did they know that the man they were mocking was the head of a multi-million-dollar company, that the online job they were mocking was the foundation of an empire. I sat quietly in the small chair behind the Christmas tree, a spot reserved for an outsider, an unwelcome outsider. From there, I listened to my parents whisper about big gifts for Michael and Sophia, extravagant investments that I knew were just their way of plugging the ever-deepening holes in the family finances. "We'll put more money into Michael's foundation so she can expand her practice," my mother said, her voice strained but still bright. "She needs a solid start after college. This is an investment in her future." "And the Manhattan apartment for Sophia," my father, Richard, added. His voice was strained to maintain his composure, but I could hear the worry in his words. He was trying to hide the slow collapse of Carter Financial, clinging to the illusion of success. He didn't know that the game was up. And I held the trump card. No more pain, no more choking. Instead, a chilling calm. I had expected it all. The humiliation was still there. A slow burn in my chest, but it didn't burn me anymore. It fed my resolve. I tightened my grip around the Business Insider and the documents in my expensive bag. I didn't bring gifts. I brought something sharper and more precious, the truth and the power to tear down their facades. I looked at Michael laughing with his glass of wine. I looked at Sophia in her expensive dress, engrossed in her phone, as if there was no one else in the world but her. I looked at my parents, the two of them playing out their perfect family act. And I thought to myself, this Christmas isn't just a revelation. It's a judgment. A slap in the face to all the admiration they've risked their dignity to earn. This will be their last Christmas in this arrogant shell. We sat around the table, the sumptuous food laid out on fine china, shimmering under the pale yellow light of candles. The clatter of knives and forks echoed, but between the sounds there was a heavy atmosphere, thick with an unnamed tension. Every glance was filled with curiosity and pity. Did they think I didn't notice? Then the moment I had been patiently waiting for finally arrived. "Okay, time for the presents," Father Richard said with a fake cheerfulness, trying to inject warmth into the stuffy air. His smile was bright, but I could see the strain in every line. He handed Michael a thick, dark red envelope, carefully sealed. "Michael, This is your investment in your clinic fund. We believe you will do well. Michael shouted excitedly, his eyes shining like a child receiving lucky money for the first time. He hugged his father, unable to hide his satisfaction. This is amazing! I can't believe it! Thank you so much, Mom and Dad! He tore open the envelope, his eyes glued to the numbers, a smug smile on his lips as if he had won the jackpot. And Sophia, my little princess. Laura's mother handed her a small box wrapped in glittering paper. When she opened it, inside was a shiny key, a cold silver. This is your new apartment in Manhattan. I know you'll love it. Right downtown, near the law office, convenient in every way. Sophia screamed as if she had won the lottery, rushing to hug her mother, her eyes glistening with tears. Oh my God, you're amazing. This is my dream. Manhattan, my own apartment. Oh, I can't believe it. She spun around the room like a stage dancer, flashing the keys to everyone, her smile dazzling. Then, silence. A cold silence fell over the room like snow falling at night. No one mentioned me. No gift wrapping. No greetings. Parents glanced at each other, their eyes awkward and forced. They didn't know where to hide their embarrassment. Oh, Emily, Mom said, her voice soft as if afraid the wind would blow it away. Your present? Well, it's late. The post office must be slow. You know, presents aren't that important, right? What's important is that we're together. A stiff silence fell. I could feel Michael and Sophia's eyes on me. Half pity, half glee. They thought I was being forgotten again, as they had been all those other holidays. But they didn't know. This time I wasn't here to receive, but to give. Not gifts, but justice. I looked at each familiar yet unfamiliar face, each gaze that had once made me ache, but now that pain had turned into fuel, a silent fire burning within. It was time to break this false scene. I stood up and took a deep breath. The chair scraped across the floor, a cold sound like a warning before a storm. All eyes immediately turned to me, confused, surprised, even wary. Mom, Dad, Michael, Sophia, I said, my voice echoing in the room like a knife cutting through the fake party. My hands tightened around the Business Insider and the stack of documents. It seems like you're forgetting something, but that's okay. I also have a special gift for all of you tonight. A gift you'll never forget. I set the magazine on the table, the cover facing them. It was me, clearly visible under the headline, The Woman Behind a $150 Million Empire, Emily Carter and the Rise of Innovate Tech. See, what you guys used to call online bullshit. This is the company I built, all by myself without a single penny of support from anyone. Blood, sweat, and even times of being looked down upon by my own family. Father Richard chuckled, a dry laugh. Are you imagining things, Emily? Who are you trying to fool with this? Who would believe such nonsense? Michael and Sophia laughed along, looking at me quizzically as if I were a bad actor in their play. I just smiled, a cold, emotionless smile. Then I pulled out a thick, neat folder and set it down on the table, right next to Michael's envelope and Sophia's shiny key. If you don't believe the magazines, here it is. Legal papers. I bought Carter Financial, my father's dyeing company, for dirt cheap. A private deal 3 months ago. And you didn't know it. The dining room froze. There was no sound. No one was breathing. Their eyes were fixed on me. On the papers, on the magazine. From shock to horror. The blood drained from my father's face. Michael's mouth was open, speechless. Sophia dropped her keys, the cold crash echoing in the silence. The tables have turned. I am in charge. And the Christmas drama. The curtain has come down. The dining room was silent, a silence that stretched like a heavy blanket over everything after my announcement. The Christmas lights were still twinkling, but they no longer radiated their usual warm glow. They were cold, unfeeling, like my gaze. I stood there at the head of the table, my back straight as a living sentence, my eyes boring into each face, pale with shock. In their eyes, I saw panic, humiliation, and a primal fear they had never shown. My father, Richard, was the first to break the silence, but his voice was no longer that of a man who had once commanded, but the whisper of a man who had just lost everything. What? What are you saying, Emily? You bought my company? No way! You're making this up. This is a joke. He struggled to his feet, but his trembling legs couldn't support his weight. He collapsed into a chair, stunned as if he had just been sentenced to death. Are you crazy, Dad? I smiled faintly, the smile of someone holding a knife in his hand. I've been following your finances every step of the way. I know Carter Financial is drowning in debt, on the verge of collapse. You're hiding everything, not just from Mom, but from Michael and Sophia. It's not me who's lying here. It's you. My mother, Laura, turned to my father, her eyes filled with disbelief, as if seeing him for the first time. Richard, is this true? Is Emily serious? You said the company was fine. Her voice shook, a mixture of anger and devastation. In the air thick with betrayal, the facade of the model family they had built so hard began to crack. Michael stepped forward and snatched the magazine and the stack of documents from my hands. His fingers shook as he flipped through the pages, skimming over the numbers, legal terms, and signatures. His face was pale, his eyes wide, his usual confident expression gone like a mirage. No way. Emily, is this real? Is Innovate Tech yours? Are you behind the app? I read about it. Oh my God. Yes. I nodded, my voice firm, as if every cell in my body was ablaze with pride. And I bought Carter Financial from my father, right when it was almost out of blood. Now, who's the real loser? I looked straight at Michael, my eyes like a cold knife cutting through his mask. Sophia backed away, step by step, as if I was something beyond her imagination. Impossible, Ink. How could you? Her voice was weak, losing the proud red lipstick and familiar sharpness. How could I? I looked at each of them, as if I wanted to engrave this moment in their hearts forever. While you were busy pouring money into Michael and Sophia, treating me as a lost shadow, as someone who was not worthy, I was quietly building my career. I learned by myself, did it by myself, picked myself up after every failure. I went through hundreds of sleepless nights, fighting the world by myself. Now, I am not only the founder of a technology corporation, but also the owner of the very company that once supported this entire family, a company that was almost ruined by my father's incompetence. I turned to my father, my eyes like ice covering all emotions. You laughed when I said I wanted to drop out of college to start a business. You called me a failure with no future. But today, the very daughter you despised has returned. Not to beg for mercy, but to save what you had made to rot. Not for love, but for honor and courage. I brought not only success, but also the truth. Written in papers, contracts, terms of sale. I laid it all out on the table like a verdict. The relatives around me began to whisper. Those who had once sneered, who had turned their backs on me, now murmured my name with looks of a mixture of shock and admiration. They looked at me like a mystery revealed, and at my family like a mask torn away. My parents, Michael and Sophia, all bowed their heads in unconcealed humiliation. They had nowhere to run. No excuses, no power, no pride. This was the moment I had waited so long for. My revenge. It had officially begun. The dining room was still as heavy as the ashes of a great fire, but this time the balance of power had shifted. Father Richard collapsed into his chair, his face white as if he had been struck by an unexpected blow. His eyes were glazed over, staring at the documents like someone who had dropped his life. Mother Laura burst into tears, her sobs echoing in the quiet room like a long, mournful song. Michael and Sophia fixed me with hateful, shocked eyes, as if I had betrayed them, even though I was only returning what they had sown. But there was no room for weakness in me now. No room for emotion. Emily, you can't do this. Mom choked, reaching out as if trying to hold on to something that was breaking. You're my daughter. You can't take away the company. The only thing your father has left. Steal it, Mom, I said, my voice as cool and empty as the early winter wind. I bought it. Legally, cleanly, from a company that was on the brink of bankruptcy. I saved it from the ruin my father had caused. I didn't destroy anything. I protected a legacy that everyone else had abandoned. Father Richard stood up, the veins on his neck bulging, his eyes filled with anger. Emily, you have no right to do this. You can't run Carter Financial. What do you know about investing to be so arrogant? I looked at him, my eyes cold and direct, and then my lips curled into a contemptuous smile. I know enough not to let the company sink deeper into debt like my father did. I have a plan for a complete restructuring. Lay off unnecessary positions, cut costs, optimize cash flow. I will put it back on its feet, but not under my father's name, but under my own. Michael stepped closer, trying to sound gentle, his voice low and negotiating. Emily, we're family. I know you're angry, but we can find a common solution. I have my own clinic. It has great potential. You can invest in it. We can cooperate, share the profits. Together we'll be stronger. I laughed, a short, dry laugh. You want to partner with someone you despised, someone you called a failed dropout? While you were flaunting your Swiss watches and preaching about your reputation as a doctor, I was quietly building a technology empire. Now you're asking for a share? Sophia also came over at this time, her face pale, her makeup now like a cracked mask. Emily, sister, I beg you. That advertising contract is my life. I worked so hard to win it. But I heard that the partner company is your sponsor. Can you help me? I'll do anything, so just say the word. I looked at Sophia, my eyes unwavering. I warned you. You laughed at my work, flaunted your pampered gifts while I had nothing but contempt. And now, the consequences have come. I have cut off funding for that modeling contract through my partners. You will lose it. No more spotlight, no more admiration. You will go back where you belong, in the background. Sophia collapsed into her chair, her eyes glistening with tears like a fallen statue. The family was in chaos. My parents pleaded. Michael tried to take advantage, Sophia pleaded. But I stood there, solid as a rock, unshaken. It was all calculated. Every move, all part of a script I had written long ago. I will terminate all financial support for this family, I announced, my voice ringing out like an uncontested sentence. And I will take full control of Carter Financial and restructure it. Do not contact me again about this. A feeling of relief, strong and burning, washed over me, as if I had just escaped from an invisible prison. I turned and walked away without looking back. My private car was waiting outside, the engine roaring softly as a greeting to freedom. I was going to the Four Seasons where I had booked a room, the beginning of a new chapter. My phone buzzed, a torrent of messages, from pleading to threatening, but I didn't read them. I was no longer bound. Everything was working as planned, and for the first time in my life, I was free from the shadow of the Carters. A few days after that fateful Christmas, I arranged separate meetings with each of the family members at my Manhattan law office. I didn't want a family-style conversation. I wanted each of them to face the consequences, undoubtedly, irreproachably, to feel the full weight of what they had done. The first person to enter was Laura's mother. She looked haggard, her face gaunt and her eyes swollen, showing the traces of many sleepless nights. She sat down on the chair opposite me, her eyes avoiding me, not daring to look straight. Emily, my dear, please. Her voice choked, pleading. I know I was wrong. I wasn't a good mother. I was so unfair to you. Please forgive me, and please give the company back to Dad. It was his whole career, his whole life. I looked straight into her eyes, calm but no less determined. You have had so many opportunities to acknowledge me. I have reached out many times, but you have always turned your back, always favoring Michael and Sophia. Now the family foundation is under my control. You no longer have the right to decide, and I will not return the company to Dad. It was a legal deal. Signed transparently. Laura's mother burst into tears. Her sobs echoed in the quiet room, her face buried in her hands, her whole body shaking. I watched silently, my emotions a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. But my heart did not waver. Michael came in next. He was wearing a tailored suit, trying to look calm, but I saw the panic in his eyes. "Emily," he said, trying to keep his tension under control. "I know you're angry, but you can't do this. You know I borrowed a lot from the foundation to expand the clinic. If you control the foundation now, please don't cut off the funding. I'll lose everything." "You borrowed from the family trust, yes," I replied, as casually as if I were talking about a banking transaction. "And I am now in control of that trust. I demand that you repay the loan within 30 days. Otherwise, I will take you to court for breach of trust. The records are complete, Michael." Michael's face turned white. He was speechless. "You can't do that. Do you want to ruin my career?" "I can, and I will if necessary," I replied, my voice cold. "You have two choices: pay or face the law. The decision is yours." He sank into his chair, his eyes panicked, silent. The last one was Sophia. She walked in, her appearance no longer glamorous. Her eyes were puffy, her hair was a mess. "Emily, please, please," she whispered. "That contract was my whole career. I worked so hard to get it. I know I was wrong to underestimate you. Please don't cancel the sponsorship." "I warned you, Sophia," I said, my voice firm and unyielding. "You mocked me, you belittled my work. You bragged about the expensive gifts your parents gave you, while I had nothing. Now you're feeling the same way. Your contract is canceled, your sponsorship is gone. You're on your own, just like I did." Sophia burst into tears. "You can't do this to me. We're sisters, you can't be so cruel." "Sisters?" I laughed, a short, cold laugh. "Sisters who leave me alone every holiday season, without a single greeting? Sisters who laugh at my failures, mocking my every effort? Sisters who stand by and watch as our parents only care for you and Michael, leaving me alone? Now you understand. What you get today is the result of what you have sown." My family was stunned. They realized with shock that they had completely misjudged me. They had looked down on me, had spurned me, had laughed at my strength. And now, faced with the truth, they could not turn away. I felt a deep satisfaction, but also a quiet emptiness in my soul. The revenge was complete, but it did not bring the complete joy I had imagined. But I had no regrets. I had done what I had to do, and now I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, one that would no longer be defined by the darkness of the past. It's been a year since that fateful Christmas. The ramifications of my revenge are now visible and undeniable. My family, once at the pinnacle of fame and fortune, is now being forced to confront the harsh reality. My father, Richard, who once prided himself on being the unshakable pillar of our company, has sold off much of his personal wealth, including his magnificent Hamptons vacation home, to pay off the company's mounting debts. I'm overhauling Carter Financial. The directors who were loyal to him and who had turned against me are being fired one by one. The company is being cleaned up from the ground up, but at a heavy cost, both in money and in memories. Michael was forced to sell his once proud medical practice to repay a massive loan from the family foundation I now control. His dreams of building a reputation in the medical world are now shattered, and he is struggling to restore his lost reputation. Sophia, having had all her sponsorships pulled, has lost all her major advertising contracts. She has been reduced to small photo shoots for obscure local brands, without the limelight or luxury labels. The once regal life is now a distant memory. Each of them is paying the price for their own choices, and it is no longer a tragedy, but a justice. As for me, I'm living a whole new chapter. No longer bound by the past, no longer wandering in their shadow, I found peace. A deep peace that comes from taking control of my own life. On stage at a tech conference in San Francisco, in front of thousands of rapt audiences, the spotlight is on me, but this time I don't feel small. I'm Emily Carter, CEO of Innovate Tech, a woman who has broken free from her past to write her own story. There was a time when I thought I needed my family to feel worthy, I said, my voice echoing in the large space, each word a confession distilled from my heart. I used to trade everything just to be recognized, to be loved, but then I realized My true worth doesn't come from the approval of others, but from how I treat myself. No one can define me but myself. I paused for a moment, looking deep into the eyes of the silent people before me. My story is for anyone who has ever been overlooked, who has ever been abandoned. Sometimes injustice is the catalyst that makes us rise up. It can be the fire that helps you achieve what others dare not dream of. But remember, revenge is only a small step. True freedom is when you are no longer controlled by your past, when you create a life that is meaningful, a life where you can be yourself without having to prove anything to anyone. I founded a charity called Empower Her Tech with a mission to support women in tech, people with aspirations but lacking opportunities. I use the profits from reviving Carter Financial to invest in meaningful projects, in other people's unfulfilled dreams, in the hopes that were once buried like mine. I found peace. Not the peace that comes from complete forgiveness, for the scars are still there, burning like knives that never fully heal, but the peace that comes from no longer letting them define my emotions and my life. I have built a new world where there are people who truly believe in me and value me, not because they know whose daughter I am, but because of who I am. I live for myself, and that is the greatest freedom I have ever experienced. This Christmas Eve, I was not in New York, not in the cold, silent Carter house with its thick walls. Instead, I was hosting a cozy party at my private villa in the suburbs of San Francisco, a space filled with light, laughter, and human warmth. The cheerful laughter of friends and colleagues, people I cherish as real family, echoed throughout the rooms, mixed with the soft jazz music and the rich aroma of roasting turkey. There was no trace of scorn, no harsh whispers, just pure appreciation and simple but sincere joy. I stood in the middle of my large living room, feeling grounded and calm, no longer held back by old memories, no longer living in the shadow of old wounds. Innovate Tech was still breaking through, becoming one of the pioneering technology companies. The charity I founded had helped dozens of young women entrepreneurs realize their dreams, planting the seeds of positive change in the community I had once aspired to be a part of. Amid the piles of congratulatory letters from all over the world, I saw a familiar envelope. It had no sender, but I recognized it immediately. I opened it. It was from my mother, Laura. My dear Emily. The handwriting trembled, the ink smeared as if it had been soaked with tears. I was wrong. I was not a good mother. I did not see you, did not acknowledge your efforts. I realized my mistake, but perhaps too late. Michael is struggling, and so is Sophia. I am sorry, my child. Please give me a chance to make it right. I miss you. I read the letter, but no strong emotions arose in my heart. No anger, no sorrow, no forgiveness. Just absolute silence. I had waited for this letter for a long time, knowing it would come. But now it no longer meant much. The pain of the past had subsided and the hatred had also disappeared. I did not reply, because I understood. Sometimes true liberation does not come from returning to the old circle of hurt, but from stepping out of it, not letting the past bind the future. I turned to my team, the people who had been with me since the beginning, who believed in me when no one else did. I gave them carefully chosen Christmas gifts, not for their material value, but for their deep appreciation and sincere gratitude. This is our Christmas, I said, my voice full of love, my eyes shining with genuine joy. A Christmas of true recognition, of people who value each other. Every person here deserves to be loved, to be understood. Never let anyone else define your worth, and never let them make you doubt yourself. I glanced at my phone screen, where I had just shared my latest blog post, telling my story openly and without reservation. I had told of the cold Christmases, the lonely years, and the uncompromising journey of building a life for myself. I wanted my message to reach far and wide, to let those who felt invisible, forgotten, undervalued, know that they were not alone, that they could stand up, that they could build a world of their own, with their own hands and courage. Everyone has a story, I thought, looking out the window where the city lights twinkled like silent stars. And every story deserves to be heard, to be understood.